That's right.
Really?
We're going skiing this weekend.
Right.
Oh, it's
You guys
cold.
used to work?
Yeah, I was his broker.
You're kidding.
You survived?
He's a,
He needs to see it in writing, show it.
yeah, it happened. Did a good job, too. Your wife's been big advertising.
But you know, aren't detailed people visual though?
Mostly, but if it has to do with numbers, then they're auditories. Because visuals think logically without putting it all down on paper. But auditories are real number thinkers. They're bankers and accountants. Occupation is real important when it comes to occupation and education. When it comes to something.
I've never worked in a factory.
Really? Well, we can do that. We gotta get that. Let's start the thing rolling again.
Hard to
Can we bring
say.
everybody back?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Hard to say. I'm not sure what I am.
I'm all over the board. You cannot be rigid in one.
Okay. This last part will be just real quick.
It's gotta be a little bit of everything, whatever fits your.
Okay, we're ready.
There's Mr. Visual.
Yeah, really.
Hey, wait, you need that chair.
You got a couple like that here. Grab those gowns outside.
They're on their second cigarette.
Grab those guys.
On their second.
What does that make me?
Hey, where's Benny Hill then? Let's get going.
You figured out.
I'm gonna meet some people.
I am too, but mostly I'm the third one.
What does that make me if I have an old car and I have a new house? What is that?
No, but I think economics has a lot to do with it, because if you cannot afford a nice house.
He says you can't tell.
That's the
people
stress
according
part
to
of it. You change because you're under stress.
You can't tell.
What are you gonna do? You know,
You can't afford to have one car.
You could be the most visual person, but if you cannot afford that
You can't
house,
afford
it's
it. You
like,
can't afford it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, so this,
Economics has a lot to do with it.
it's better to have an old car.
I have an old car too.
Don't you
But
think
yet
so?
I fall in this group.
But like you said, sometimes you do try to.
That's what I would say.
Really?
Right.
I can sign settings. My problem's in here, but I can.
Okay, the real acid test to this, do you know what acid test means?
Nope.
How do you cure metal when you're trying to decide whether it's gold or silver? With acid. Okay, so the real acid test of this is where are most of your memories? Are most of your memories sounds or logical information? Then you're auditory. If most of your memories are in picture form or in movies, then you're visual. If most of your memories are just basically the way you feel, then you're kinesthetic. That's the real, what it really boils down to. Is think about the most important things that you've done in life, and check it out. Is it just a picture or a movie, or is it sounds, or is it the way you felt about it?
Yes, including smells and things.
Yeah. Okay. Does that help? The most important things you've done in your life, because those are the things that bring on the emotions and everything else that makes them a real, true, good, hardcore memory. Okay, now the last thing we're going to talk about today, we're going to do this, we're going to wrap this up as fast as we can. We're going to talk about concentration. We're going to see if we can enhance your concentration skills just a little bit. This is a whole different subject, so put all of that other part out of your mind now, and come back to us now in learning about concentration. There are some real keys to concentration. First thing we need to talk about, though, is why do we need to learn to concentrate better? And one is, as many people will tell you, you'll be able to do better on written tests or driving tests, for instance, or anything else you really do. You'll be able to do better if you're really able to concentrate on it. You're really able to, as we say, focus on the subject. Now, the way you do this, there are some answers as to how you do this. How do you focus in? How do you get the best focus on something? If you're reading something and you want to really focus in on it, or if you really want to concentrate on what you're reading, the easiest way to do it is to form a picture of what you're reading. And you can do that about anything you're reading. Anything. Now, the reason I say that is because if you can have a picture, then you know what it really looks like. But you can't do just pictures. You have to use all three of the basic senses that we talked about earlier. Make a sound about it. If you're reading a novel, for instance, how many of you do recreational reading, as I call it? You read novels? Okay. When you're reading a novel, you can read a novel from cover to cover in a short amount of time and still get all that you got out of it before and speed read. Okay. It doesn't matter. Speed reading is great for any kind of reading, but novels it's actually its best. And the reason for that is because you can get a picture. You can actually be a faster reader by getting this picture going of what's going on. And what you need to do when you pick up a novel is figure out who the main characters are, right in the first page or two, and get a picture of them and what they really look like, and then interrelate them with everybody and everything else that goes on in that novel, all the way through the novel. And you'll be able to breeze through that novel, lickety-split, and you'll be done with it, if you have a picture. Now, if you want to really get more out of it, if you really want to concentrate on it and find out what really is going on, and not just a picture, but also the sounds that are going on. Actually create them in your own mind. And when we hypnotize somebody, actually we will tell them to imagine a sound or something like that. Sometimes they can actually hear the sound. Because their brain doesn't have the ability, your brain doesn't have the ability to decipher when you're hypnotized whether the sound is coming from here or a different part of the brain to the sensory region. Does that help? So when you're reading something, make the sounds of what's going on. Also, get the feelings of what's going on. Concentration is done in those main three senses. So if you get a picture and the sounds and the feelings, you're going to be able to be right into it, and you're going to be more concentrated on what's going on in your reading. Now suppose you're meeting somebody and you forget their name. Yeah. Suppose you meet somebody and you forget their name. What's the easiest way to remember their name? Right, thanks, Steve. Then when I go home and I've got Debbie written on my hand, what does my wife say? Especially if there's a phone number there, huh? Real good. Okay, what can you do? Concentrate on the features. So look at their nose and how it relates to someone else maybe that you knew named Debbie. And their eyes, and the shape of their eyes, the color of their eyes, their eyebrows. Concentrate on exactly what she looks like. Or whoever else you know. The shape of their body, the height, their breathing rate. Remember the things that while you're matching and mirroring them, while you're trying to decide what personality to categorize them into. Zero in on their features. And you'll be able to remember because you've concentrated your efforts, you've concentrated your entire mind on that. Concentration is easily done if you take those three main senses and you incorporate all three of those into anything you do. Now what I'm going to ask you to do right now is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and I'm going to see if you can concentrate on something I'm doing. I'm not going to hypnotize you, we're just going to concentrate on something. Okay, you're sitting in a room and it's downtown Los Angeles and it's hot and it's in about the third floor of the building and you're a little bit tense, a little bit worried, a little apprehensive. You're sitting at a small desk and all you have in front of you is a pencil and a small calculator and a test. How many of you have taken a real estate exam lately? Now, concentrate on all of everything that's going on there, the emotions of the moment. Okay, you remember the emotions? You're just a little bit stressed, you wanted to make sure you passed. Everything you did, your eyes aren't closed. Okay. Everything that you did, concentrate on the feelings. What did you see around you? There was another desk in front of you, maybe you weren't on the front row, a couple more. There were a few people scattered around the room with you taking the same exam. And there was this gal up in the front of the room giving you instructions, and she's really loud, and you think she doesn't really need to be that loud because I can hear her just fine. Do you remember those things? You can hear her voice. Can you remember, was it a lady when most of you took the test? Okay, so you've got the picture, you got the sounds, and you've got the emotion. Okay, now everybody, you can open your eyes. Now, think about that. Do you all remember vividly when you took the state exam, the real estate exam? Is there anybody here who can't remember anything about it? You can't remember anything about it? How long ago did you take it?
12 years.
And did you care whether you passed or not?
Yeah. It was the only job I ever had. Yeah.
Was it the most important thing in life at that given moment?
Yeah.
That's pretty rare that somebody doesn't remember most of the details of the situation. I can tell you what the girl sat next to me looked like. And I can tell you what the old I can tell you what the lady and the old man looked like. I can tell you the layout of the room, exactly where I was sitting for the first half and for the second half of the brokers. I'll tell you everything about it. And the reason for it is because, and it wasn't important to me that I passed. It was important, but it wasn't important because I don't do it for a living, but I wanted to pass. But the stress was high, because I couldn't go home and say, I failed the exam. But the other things were, I had my visual on, and I had a picture of the whole thing, and I could tell you the sounds that were going on. I can even tell you the guy that got up first and finished his test first. And I thought, how can he be done yet? Because I was concentrating. And if you will concentrate on those things. Now the other thing is when you're reading or when you're in a class or doing something else, if you will play like to yourself, like tomorrow you have to give a report on the same book. Or I have to give a report to my friend on the class we took. I have to give a report on it. Then you will be more concentrated if you, oh yeah, I have to give a class on this tomorrow. I have to give a report on this tomorrow. Then you're going to remember more easily the things that you went through because you're more concentrated simply because you were saying to yourself, I have to remember that.
Yeah.
Very simple.
If you were concentrating on taking this test, why would you know all the things that were going on around you? I'm curious.
I knew my stuff.
Well, I mean, my idea of concentration would be maybe
Concentrating
you're
on
paying
the
so much
things.
attention that you don't even know what somebody next to you looks like or what else was going on in the class.
That could be. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was
Probably
it.
because I had to pass so, I mean, maybe it was so much stress to pass that it was like
You know, that may be it. In fact, I
Memorize the
remember when I
questions.
took my first broker's exam in Utah, I already owned my company and I had a hired broker and I had to pass. We were paying this guy every month whether we sold anything around. And I don't remember anything about that. So maybe that's it. I was concentrated on the exam. Or when I took one down here in LA, cared enough. But concentrate on the details of what you're doing. The book, or whatever. If you're going to give a class on tomorrow, if you were going to give, sorry, what's your name? Phyllis. If you were going to give a report on this class tomorrow, would you be able to do it? Because you were attentive and you were concentrated on the class. She's even got notes. Boy, those are good notes. I should use those next time for this class. Okay, concentration is really important. Now, when you concentrate on somebody that you're trying to match your mirror, what are you concentrating on? Anybody remember matching the mirror from last week? Your body language.
Breathing.
Excuse me?
The breathing.
Your breathing. Okay. Remember what we talked about breathing? Guys are easier, or not as easy to tell as girls about breathing. Okay. Anybody else remember anything about last week? Right? Eye contact. Eye contact. Okay, keep in mind whether they're looking at you or looking away, you know, if they're always looking all over the place. Do the same thing they're doing, because not very many people will stare at you forever. Except her. Okay. What else? Heartbeat. Remember what we said about heartbeat? Remember the time you were most intimate with somebody? Your heartbeats were almost exactly the same. Probably were the same for quite a while. Okay.
How can you know your heartbeat's the same though?
Can't you hear somebody else's heartbeat?
You mean like a client try to match his heartbeat? Or
You can, well, yeah, you can tell. That's pretty tough, but you can tell. The most charismatic people in the world do that. They don't do it consciously, they do it subconsciously. And you can tell you can tell by looking at their temples, you can see when their pulse is going. That's really the easiest.
Okay.
Okay. Eye dilation, remember? Some of those other things we talked about, clothing, their mannerisms, whether they really get into moving their arms, shaking it all about, or whatever. Be the same kind of person that they are. Remember, that's matching the mirror. Concentrate on those things. Okay. Now, in conclusion for today, I'm really done with concentration in the personality session. But let me tell you this, that if you will concentrate on the things that you're doing, if you will apply these skills, apply in action all three, your visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, to all the situations, you're going to have more intimate relationships with everyone, you're going to be more fulfilled, and you're going to be happier. Not to mention the fact that you'll make more money. So make sure that you concentrate on the things that you do. That's it for today. Thanks. Next week is on, I didn't pass that out.
You know what? I missed the breathing.
Oh, next week. Hypnosis next week, guys. Next week, we're going to talk about habit modification and self-hypnosis. We're going to teach you to hypnotize yourself
Look at
next
their
week.
chest, dude.
So that'll be fun.
What if the chest don't move? Like his chest doesn't move.
Things happen and people say wearing where I met him. I can't remember the name.
Okay, the easiest way to do that from now on is when you meet somebody new.
How they breathe?
What's your name? Marty? Do you know anybody else in the world named Marty? Besides, okay. What you can do, if you want to remember their name, is you put a picture of that person right next to them. And then compare their facial features. Okay? That's one way. The other way of remembering that her name is Marty is by saying, okay, see Marty going into the supermarket. Or see her with
Just
Mark
photograph her with her name under it.
across her forehead or something. Yeah,
Big key.
Marty.
That's what I do.
Those are some memory enhancements.
I photograph them with their name right here.
But there are some people that I can remember them, and then there are other people
Does that help?
I will not remember their name.
That's because you don't really
Any
like
other
them.
questions? Okay.
You don't really like
Oh,
them.
you had a question?
Ask him.
Really, if you don't
Is
remember,
there
you have to get
anything
make a
that you
confession.
recommend as far as a reading material on this? I mean, bringing it all in together like Ray,
But some people know.
he's wondering if you have to jump on the client to hear their heartbeat. No, not that you're wondering that, but I mean, that's just a question. It's like, how are you going to tell their heartbeat? But how this can kind of relate. When you say, like, bring it all into focus with selling. You know, okay, here's some examples. If you have a person that you can identify as a
As a
visual
visual?
person,
As a
you
visual?
hop in the car with them. You know, what do you do?
What do you do? What do you do?
Or I like the one like if you say if you know someone has auditory, like we've yelled at people before and you can tell they just shut the switch off.
Yeah.
And how do you handle that auditory person when you do have to say something to them along the lines of
Okay.
wake up, sure.
Well, the question, the answer to the question, the general question is how do you know these things later on? Is study the notes that you took, or I videotaped this. If you guys want a copy of it here in the office, you can watch it later. You want to do that?
Yeah.
I'll copy
Okay.
it off. Or, but you know, one of the things that I forgot to tell you about auditories is, remember when, well, actually it relates to visuals and auditories. Remember a long time ago when somebody said, speak softly, in fact, if you whisper, people will try to listen to what I say. Did you hear what I said?
No.
Did you try to hear what I said?
Yeah.
What I said wasn't important. Well, the fact that you were trying because I was whispering was what was important. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're over here whispering to Vince, and somebody's over there, they think, oh, this is important. Right? Yeah, is he talking about me? Is he gonna give me a raise in my commission rate? Oh, we don't do that. Or whatever.
Capital stuff.
You had a
Yeah,
question first.
I did have a question after thinking about it. That's, maybe I concentrate a little bit too much, like tunnel vision. I have a hard time noticing what people are doing or anything else. Anything that I do that's mirroring and matching would be strictly subconscious because I have a hard time noticing other things that are going on. So how would one training oneself to notice those things consciously.
Well, that's something that you need to do, you need to work on. Give yourself affirmations or something like that in the morning is one good way. But one thing you can do is say to yourself, and we'll talk about habit modification next week, is learn to hypnotize yourself, to give yourself suggestions to be able to do that. You can do that. Okay?
I was gonna say, what, if you learn to turn off, say something like you see someone whispering in your ear, this is going, and you see this, and you have learned to just cut it off, it doesn't bother you, forget it. It's like this with this and this. Is that wrong?
No. If you, actually, that's
You need
kind of
it.
neat if you can do that.
Yeah.
I have a hard time doing that. I kind of like Vince now. I can hear jokes go across the room. Usually I miss the punchline. Wait a minute, tell me that joke. Did you have another question, Ray?
No.
Any other questions? Next week, wear your hypnotizable faces because I'm going to hypnotize whoever wants to be next week. And nobody if they don't want to be. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to teach you self-hypnosis next week and habit modification so that you can overcome some of the habits that you have. Next week's a little bit, quite a bit shorter than quite a bit shorter.
Actually, I do have a quick question.
Oh, no, sorry, it's too late.
Does it matter? Does it matter what personality they are if you mirror them?
No,
It doesn't matter, even if you're not that personality.
no, it doesn't matter.
If people just change, if you got somebody that's got all three, I mean, they just change, I mean, it's almost impossible to figure out what they're gonna be, where they're gonna buy or whatever.
Almost impossible, but not. Let me tell you a story about my wife. When we first moved to California, we sold a lot of our junk furniture, or all of our auditory furniture, and we got rid of it. Sent it to the dump and the Goodwill and everywhere else. When we came here, we needed furniture for our living room and for the family room. And so we went all over every store we could think of, and we finally zeroed in on this one store with this. This is my wife's choice. This sofa, you've seen one in the family room. The sofa in our family room is one of those that goes around, what do you call it, sectionals? And it's kind of soft and it's cushiony, and I like the layout. I wish it was. But I didn't pick this sofa, and the light that goes with it and everything else, okay? She picked it, and we bought it. I mean, we had gone everywhere to find the right one at the right price.